XTV are at the BFI London Film Festival
2019.
An annual festival
founded in 1957
that runs every October for 2 weeks. We'll be speaking to filmmakers,
attending press conferences,
and of course watching lots of films.
We're going to experience love,
debate, laugh,
dare,
thrill,
cult,
journey, create,
family,
experimenter,
and treasures.
I'm excited. Let's go.
We've just come back from seeing the film Rocks, directed by Sarah Gavron.
This funny yet moving feature film focuses on the lives of young girls living and growing up in London. What did you think, Lily?
So I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it. I think the film achieves a really wonderful blend of being both very moving at times. There's some quite difficult scenes focusing on poverty and broken families, but it's also very heartwarming and uplifting. Other times there's great scenes of friendship and sibling love.
Yeah, I definitely think that the heart of the film is in the relationships between, like you said, the siblings, friendships, mother and child relationships. That's what I really enjoyed most about the film, and I think it was done really authentically, really natural.
Yeah, I can agree. Relating to your point about the film being natural, the filming style was very effective in conveying this. So it kind of felt as if you're watching a group of friends who didn't even know they're being filmed. It didn't seem scripted at all. It was very natural, and the director sort of helped convey this by the use of social media and Snapchat footages, which were interspersed with the more professional filming throughout.
We were also lucky enough to see the red carpet at the Odeon Leicester Square premiere of Rocks. This gave us the opportunity to see some of the cast members talking to the press, as well as director Sarah Gavron.
One of the films I enjoyed most at the festival was Takashi Miike's First Love. Miike is an incredibly prolific filmmaker, having made over 100 films in several different genres, from children's films to romances to his most famous, incredibly gory action films. And don't let the name fool you, First Love firmly belongs in the latter camp. This is a film that does have some romantic elements to it, but primarily is a gory, graphic, violent film about a Yakuza operation gone very wrong in Japan. The film's performances are all ridiculously energetic and very fun to watch. And I've got to say, even though this film does deal with quite a few heavy themes and shows incredibly graphic acts of violence, it still manages to have a consistently silly and funny tone. You're going to end up laughing quite a lot at this film, even at parts that you might feel guilty for laughing at. But overall, I'd recommend Takashi Miike's film greatly. First Love is a fantastic film to watch, particularly for those who are fans of Quentin Tarantino's work, as it contains the same amount of hyper-violent yet hilarious thrills.
I'm at the Mayfair Hotel in London for the filmmaker afternoon teas, and I'm very excited because I'm about to go and talk to Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun about her feature-length documentary, I Am Not a Monster. Let's go. But I haven't actually seen the documentary yet. I'm going to see it later tonight.
Okay,
I'm very,
amazing.
very excited. So this is sort of like a bit of preparation and knowing what I'm going to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, you teach some students, and
Yeah.
I've read that they feature in your documentary, and
Correct.
I was wondering what inspired you to do this and what the process was like in collaborating with your own students.
So I'm Not a Monster, this feature-length movie, right? It's about the origin of knowledge. So it's about hunting for the origin of knowledge, and kind of like it's a journey, an impossible pursuit, basically, of something that I'm trying to bring back to my students when they start in September.
Right.
So it starts pretty much like that, with that kind of intrigued. And then what the film does is it's advocating for pluralistic thinking. And it's advocating for a form of education that supports plurality of thoughts. And I think what we are seeing at this point in time is a reinforcement of what is said in the movie as the age of loneliness, which is the idea that I'm not going to talk to you because I don't agree with you. You're pro-Trump or you're pro-Brexiter, and I don't want to engage with you. And of course, art school and I kind of known for also being quite against certain type of ideas. And what I'm saying at the University of the Underground is that, and it's quite controversial at this point in time in history, but this is really important that I say it, is that actually everybody should be welcome at the table for a place to debate and discuss ideas. And I'm taking the I'm talking about the philosophy of someone called Hannah Arendt, and Hannah Arendt is a political theorist that survived the Second World War, and she wrote this book called The Origin of Totalitarianism. And what she was saying, because she survived the Second World War, and she survived, Hitler and the regime of Hitler, and she's saying that it's so important to make sure that we don't reinforce ideology, but we make sure that actually we broadcast multiple viewpoints to students and to members of the public in general, not just one viewpoint. And that's the kind of the really key element of the movie. And within that context, of course, my students kind of they basically come in pretty much at the end of the movie, where they kind of see what I bring back in my suitcase. But I'm not, they are not featured in the movie per se like that. Like, I don't ask them, what do you think is the origin of knowledge? But I'm trying to actually, as an educator, kind of have that journey of trying to find what it means to put together an education, and specifically a platform like the one of the University of the Underground. Yeah. So I'd say to you, it's a film that obviously will speak to students, but will also speak to educators too, and to students to actually start something new in the world. I think that's the key message.
I'm very interested as well that, so I read that you teach through a whole range of disciplines. Why did you decide to use the medium of film to get across this particular view and message?
Well, I mean, it's my third movie, right? So it's like, for me, it's a tool that I like to tell stories, but also one that kind of like is so dynamic that you can really embed characters, and you will see in the movie as well, there is this kind of esoterical journey. I have a miniature version of myself. There is dolls that I bring between thinkers and different places. He felt that it was the right medium to actually tell the story of that journey, but of course it could become a book, it could become other things. But for me, I'm not a writer. Like, I had to write a PhD, and it was like already a torture. I don't think this is really the medium that I use, but like film is one that I kind of like to think is a good one to share, at least a learning curve. Now, it's not just a film, it's also a record, which actually I should show it to you too. This is each of the records have been made at the Vinyl Factory plant, which is basically based in the UK. They have like a long tradition of making records, right? And so, of course, when you talk about knowledge, you think about the golden record and other things like that. So we made a special, it's 4 records in one, and the idea is we distribute the movie not on a distributor, usual road, but we distribute it through the Vinyl Factory, so you can buy the record and make your own sound mix, or you can come to the cinema and get a free record. I had to come up with my own distribution model, and that's what I did here. And I'm hoping that this distribution model can be used by many other independent filmmakers. I mean, that's the whole idea. It's not just to do one movie out of it, but it's to say, actually, independent filmmaker and young student and others, sometimes you might feel that actually the industry is not made for you. Probably it's not made for you, but make it that it's make it bent to your needs and not the other way around, and that's possible. And that's basically what the film is saying. I mean, it's a very positive movie in a way. It's a very positive movie that is saying, yes, we are in deep trouble. Yes, our times are extremely troubled, and yes, there is a temptation for authoritarian regime that is finding its survival. But now within that, once you understand the mechanics of that, once you understand the mechanics of thinkings, then why don't you start something new in the world? Why don't you actually engage with a form of action? And why don't you think in action? And that's basically what we hope to trigger.
I can't wait to watch it later. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Me and Sam just got back from the press screening of A Hidden Life, the brand new film from Terrence Malick, director of Badlands, Days of Heaven, and The Tree of Life. Sam's going to tell us what the film's about.
Okay, so the film is about a pacifist in World War II from Austria who refuses to join the war effort for the Nazis, and it's based on a real story, and it follows the events after his refusal and what he goes through with his family, what his wife goes through, what his children go through, and his village as a whole. How their treatment of them changes, and how he tries to stick to his faith and to his principles throughout everything he goes through.
So if you're familiar with Malick's more recent work, this fits in very much with it. It's a very kind of fragmented narrative approach in which all the scenes flow together kind of like a stream of consciousness, memories of memories flowing into each other. He employs his usual super wide-angle lenses with everything in focus to really immerse you within the place, as if you're one of the people in the actual scenes. And speaking of scenes, this is quite an interesting film, as it's the most conventionally narrative film that Malick's done in a while. The Tree of Life, Night of Cups, and To the Wonder have employed a super fragmented style where, like I said, it's kind of like a stream of consciousness thing, but this does employ several long scenes with shot reverse shot and things you'd expect of a more conventional narrative film. And the period detail of this film is captured in exquisite detail. Every element, right down to the village of Radegund, which was originally going to be the title of the film, to the interior of the prison in which the main character is kept, are rendered in a way that makes them feel lived in. So, Sam, what did you think of A Hidden Life?
I thought it was amazing, personally. Very profound. I thought it dealt with its themes in a very sort of interrogative and effective way, looking at principles, love, family, religion, all of these things in a way that's, it's really in depth for me as well, personally. So I've come up from a very religious background, so poignant, very affecting. It's beautiful, really. The content is great. The story is, the idea behind the story of like hidden lives that we don't hear about acts of courage that get lost in history. I love that. It's great. What did you think?
I enjoyed it, not quite as much as you, but I definitely think that, particularly if you're a fan of Malick, particularly new modern Malick, you'll really be a big fan of this one. Particularly if you're a fan of Martin Scorsese's Silence, a 2016 film that deals with crises of faith similar to this, you'll find a lot to enjoy with this one, because it deals with the same sort of philosophical themes. I would say, however, that I thought the film is 3 hours long, or just about, 2 hours 50 minutes, and I think that it could have lost a bit of time and the effect would still remain the same, but I still think that it's an incredibly engrossing experience, and particularly if you're a fan of Malick, you'll love this film.
You know what, for me it didn't actually feel like too much of a slog. 3 hours went by pretty quick.
Make up your mind for yourself and see A Hidden Life when it comes out in cinemas for a wide release.
One of my favourite films so far at the London Film Festival 2019 has been Le Mans 66. This is a racing film about the 24 hours at Le Mans. Christian Bale is playing Ken Miles, one of the race car drivers who competes in this race. The film is full of really exciting scenes with lots of epic crashes, and it really dramatises the whole competition between Ford and Ferrari. Henry Ford being the owner of this massive American car manufacturing company, and Ferrari obviously owning the massive Italian racing car company. Ford want to manage to build a competitive race car that can beat Ferrari in terms of speed and in terms of performance. The film really goes into detail about how they need to change the parts and consistently, in the pit stop, fix the car to make sure that it can maintain its speed for a long amount of time. This bit is so interesting, and it's really great to see Christian Bale's performance and Matt Damon as Carroll Shelby helping him coach and make the car work together. I really recommend this film to people because it's so exciting. You're constantly on the edge of your seat with the racing and everything going so fast. It's so hard not to enjoy it. And I also really like the way that they recognise the true story that's behind it all, that inspired the story. And at the end, they show the real pictures of Ken Miles, and they tell us what went on and happened afterwards in the years following 66.
One of the most hotly discussed films of the festival, premiering on its final night before eventually being distributed via Netflix, was Martin Scorsese's brand new gangster epic, The Irishman, a film starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, in his first live-action film role in 9 years. XTV were privileged to attend the press conference for The Irishman on the final day of the festival, where we got to see Scorsese, De Niro, and Pacino themselves talk about the making of the film. Scorsese opened up about his experiences working with Netflix for the project, as well as doubling down on his recent controversial statements that Marvel movies are theme parks and are not cinema.
The value of a film that's like a theme park film, for example, the Marvel type pictures, where the theaters become amusement parks, that's a different experience. And it's not even, I was saying earlier, it's not cinema, it's something else. You know, whether you go for that or not, but it is something else, and we shouldn't be invaded by it. Having the backing of a company that says, you know, you will have no interference, you'll make this picture as you want. The trade-off is it streams with theatrical distribution prior to that. I figure that's the chance we take on this particular project. You know, what streaming means and how that's going to define a new form of cinema, I'm not sure. I thought for a while maybe long-form TV is cinema. It's not. It simply isn't. You know, it's a different viewing experience. You could look at 3 episodes, 2, 4, 10, you know, one week, second episode the second week. That's not, it's a different kind of thing. So there's got to be still, what has to be protected is the singular experience of experiencing a picture, ideally with an audience. You know, but there's room for so many others now, and so many other ways, and there's going to be crossovers completely.
The trio also discussed the CGI de-aging techniques used in the film to tell a story that takes Robert De Niro's character, the gangster Frank Sheeran, from his 20s all the way up until his 80s.
In terms of the CGI that we did, and the reason why we went to CGI is kind of complicated because at a certain point, if I made the film earlier, they could have played younger, and then at a certain point we missed that, and then they said, well, use younger actors to play them younger, and I said, well, what's the point of that, and back and forth, and finally the CGI, we tried it and said, well, let's try, let's see, let's experiment, open it up. I mean, CGI, to that extent, is really an evolution of makeup.
Yeah, I always joke that my career will be extended another 30 years. But I don't know. I'm just happy we're at the beginning stages of it really being explored and goes. God knows where it'll go. And what excited me about it was that Pablo Hellman was doing this thing and wanted to make it state of the art, the best it could be.
It's also how we move, remember?
Oh, yeah, well, that
big
too.
thing.
Yeah.
You know how you move. These are the little things in there. You know, you're going along looking pretty, and then you go to get up, and so someone come by us and just say, "Hey, man, what are you doing? You're 39."
On the South Bank, having just come back from seeing The Cave.
The film focuses on events from summer 2018, in which 12 Thai boys and their football coach become stuck in a cave when it floods.
And how they were saved by an international rescue team. What did you think, Lily?
So I think it was a film that was very uplifting, a story about the trials and difficulties of rescuing a Thai football team and their coach in a very difficult scenario. But I felt really good at the end because the film was done in a very sensitive way, and it focused on the individual heroes and how they overcame the trials to safely get the boys and their coach out of the cave.
I really enjoyed the film too. I thought some of the cinematography was really interesting. They used a lot of kind of handheld cameras. It felt very shaky, as if you were there, felt very like realistic. And I really enjoyed, just like you did, it was quite an uplifting story at the end. The way they kind of had the celebration when all the boys were rescued was really lovely. What did you think of the film's themes and the way that they were presented?
So one of the themes that I noticed in the film was this focus on global cooperation. It was a really large-scale mission. We had all sorts of people from all over the world helping. So there were Thai Navy SEALs diving to help the boys. There was the US military forces. There were specialist divers from Britain. They got some air masks from Cardiff. And there was also an Irish diver who featured in the film. But as well as this, there were also some very local individual heroes. So Amber, would you recommend the film to other people?
Definitely, I think it was really amazing. It was really touching. It kind of gave some Italian neorealism vibes because it used a blend of actors and real people who were genuinely there in the events.
We were lucky enough to meet Jim Warney, an Irish diver who took part in the real-life rescue and portrayed himself in the film.
How was that meeting him, Lily?
I have to say he was a very humble man. Whenever we asked him about how he felt, whether he was nervous, he played it down and he said, you know what, I just focused on the mission. I put all my negative thoughts to the back of my mind, and afterwards I had a nice cold beer.
And even in parts of the film where it was definitely not going to plan, there was parts where he had to kind of give injections and stuff to the kids and make sure everything went smoothly. There were times where he definitely could have panicked and things could have gone really badly wrong, but he stayed so calm and he just had such a calm mindset, and it was really amazing to see and meet him in person. It made me feel quite emotional because seeing him in real life, and as you said, like, he just seemed so kind of not traumatized by it, which you'd really expect from something that was kind of that dramatic. So yeah, I would definitely recommend.
I would. I have to say as well, hats off to the director, because one of the things about the film, obviously it's a very sensitive subject. there was one of the Thai rescuers who sadly died during the rescue, and I thought the director portrayed this in a very sensitive way.
And definitely touching on that, Tom Waller, who's the director, also said that he really likes to have that kind of personal, genuine, authentic vibe within his films. And when asked by one of the people at the screening what kind of projects he's looking at moving on to next, he kind of mentioned that he's potentially toying with the idea of doing a piece on the Bali bombings, as his brother unfortunately died during these, and this film has given him courage to take on more personal and kind of dramatic topics that to him are quite emotional, but he's learned from this, and I think that would be really interesting to see.
I'm also here at the Filmmaker Afternoon Teas at the Mayfair Hotel, and I'll be talking to Tom Waller about his new film, The Cave. I was wondering if, in terms of film, when would you say is right to use an actor and when is right to use a non-actor?
Well, to be honest, my film concentrates on those unsung heroes, the people that we don't really know about, the people that weren't celebrated on YouTube. So for me, it was very important that we put a face to these names, because, a lot of the events unfolded on television. We saw the TV news, and there was uniquely no first-person perspective on this event. So although we had lots of accounts of what happened, it was usually a news reporter sort of reporting live on the scene or speculating on what was going on. So for me, it was very important to actually try and tell the story from a more immersive point of view, to try and bring you into the cave, to show you how these kids were extracted, to basically put a face to these unsung heroes.
It's a very noble cause. I was wondering if, of course, when you're making a film like that, you can't 100% transcribe events, otherwise it'd be just as long as the actual events. I was wondering what you consider to be acceptable creative liberties to take when you're making a film based on true events.
Well, it's very difficult when you make a film about any recent event, because you've got to worry about people's intellectual property rights. You have to worry about the legality of sometimes when you depict someone. You don't want to get into defamation suit because you've depicted someone in a way that they're not happy with. So you have to weed this very subtle legal process of making sure that everything you depict in the film is either, that you have witnesses for it and that you can depict it in a way that you want, or that you have to, maybe certain things you have to avoid. For example, I had to avoid several subjects in this movie just to make sure that we weren't going into sensitive areas or unsavory information that I didn't feel should be part of the film. I mean, when you make any film about an event which actually happened, you're sort of rewriting the history. It's a little bit like making a second draft of that history, because the first draft could be construed to be the television reports, the kind of live reporting that you see on, for example, on social media, or the newspaper accounts of what happened and the reporting by journalists. But when you make a film, you're sort of making a second draft of that history. You're telescoping the timelines, you're amalgamating characters, you're taking information that maybe you didn't know then and you now know in retrospect, and adding that to the mix. So I think it is very important as a filmmaker to be responsible at what story you're telling. I mean, I saw a miniseries recently called Chernobyl, which is a fantastic dramatization of what happened with that disaster. And I think, the first draft of history was the kind of reports that came out of Russia, and it was all sort of probably skewed in terms of its reporting to be sanitized by the Russian authorities, because they didn't want people to know exactly what had happened. And now we know what happened at that event, and it was being beautifully dramatized into a series. That again is a sort of second draft of history, and that's how people remember Chernobyl, was because they will have seen that limited series and said, I know what happened at Chernobyl because I watched the TV show. So I think for this film, it's also important to be responsible about what I'm putting on screen and what I'm telling in my, less than 2 hours, because the events took place over 18 days, but you've only got feature film length to tell the story.
To hear a film address real events from that perspective is very, very interesting to hear. Did you ever encounter any problems on the set with actors having to relive experiences which may have been quite different?
There was a lot of sense memory going on with the non-actors on set, the ones who were involved in the actual rescue itself, because everything was painstakingly recreated to be realistic. So when you see these divers in a cave dragging out these boys, that's very much real. We had real kids with real face masks, with real oxygen tanks, and we basically reenacted the whole rescue several times, and it wasn't just you know, in one boy was taken out. It took maybe 4 hours for a boy to come out. But these boys were in the water. These actors who played the wild boars were in the water for days sometimes, you know, to reenact those scenes. So in fact, it was at times stressful, and there's a safety aspect to think about. But yeah, you do have to think about, you know, where the, you know, the non-actors who are involved, they got quite emotional about some of this, because it was something that brought back memories of something that had happened very recently.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting to hear that kind of perspective about film. And I guess one last thing, we're a student television station after all.
Yeah.
What would you say to students starting off making films about how they can aim to make films with purpose?
Well, I think the first thing is to face your fears. Is always to have the courage to actually make a film that you want to make, to stick to the vision that you have, and absolutely to be tenacious about it, and to never give up. Because this film for me was an almost impossible task, to try and get permission to shoot in the real cave, to try and get access to I didn't have access to the boys, for example. I wasn't able to tell their story because their rights had been sewn up by the Thai government. So in fact, for me to tell a story about boys got stuck in a cave and not being able to interview the boys was actually a big challenge. But I ended up deciding to take the approach of the rescuers and to tell it from their point of view, and that really was the vision that I ended up having for the film. And you know, just I think the advice is to never give up. Face your fears, overcome them, and never give up.
Perhaps the most unique experience for me this weekend has to be going to see the film Burning Cane. The film is directed by Philip Humans, who's just 19 years old, and it's amazing to see such creativity and innovation from such a young director, even down to the title of the film, Burning Cane. In an interview after the screening, Philip explains how in Louisiana, where the film is set, burning cane is an integral part of community life. But on the other hand, it's been shown to produce toxins in the environment. Philip intends to use this title as a symbol for the church, which is a consistent theme throughout the film. Whilst this is an important aspect of community life in Louisiana, he also hopes to show some of the underlying detrimental effects of the religious institution. I would recommend this film to anybody who wants to see something new, see something fresh and exciting, and perhaps get a new perspective on film. It was really interesting for me because I found it very artistic and not like any of the films I've seen before, where there's a very clear plot line and clear story. A lot of the film focused on interesting imagery, interesting narration, and it was very engaging in a different way. So I would definitely recommend it for something new.
Something I've really enjoyed at this year's London Film Festival has been The Lighthouse. It's Robert Eggers' sophomore feature, and it's starring Willem Dafoe and a fabulous mustachioed Robert Pattinson. The story follows two men manning a lighthouse on a very small island, and their struggles from the point at which they realise they cannot leave. The film's shot on gorgeous 35mm black and white film stock. It's in Academy ratio, the composition is ceaselessly amazing. The imagery is striking, it's visceral, the soundtrack is amazing, the performances are fantastic. I loved pretty much everything about it, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a horror fan.
While our time at the London Film Festival drew to a close, we managed to see a few more interesting things, such as the red carpet premiere of Marielle Heller's A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, a film about Fred Rogers. And while the film star Tom Hanks did not appear for this premiere, we managed to catch Edgar Wright, director of films such as Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead and Baby Driver, attending to watch the film himself. One of the highlights of the festival by far was the closing night gala for the premiere of Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. We had the opportunity to see stars from the film walking the red carpet, and saw Anna Paquin talking to the press about her role as Peggy Sheeran in the film. And even after seeing all this, we still had time for a few more reviews.
we've just seen 2 fantastic films today. So Sam, what did you see and what do you think?
So today I saw Marriage Story, the latest film from Noah Baumbach, starring Laura Dern, Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver. It looks at the story of an actor and her divorce from her playwright husband, and how that occurs across 2 different states, from California and New York.
What did you think?
What I think, it was amazing, extremely human, extremely affecting. The performances are probably the 2 best that I've seen at the festival, or probably the 2 best I've seen this year. There's a few really, really breathtaking scenes of dialogue in the film. There's one moment that is sort of the crux of the entire thing. Amazingly directed. The performances are sublime. Really, really great. Definitely recommend. Yeah. Shed a few tears, laughed a lot. It was great. What did you see?
I saw I Am Not a Monster by Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun. This was a feature-length documentary on the impossible pursuit to find the origins of knowledge. This was undertook by Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun herself. I really enjoyed it, and it was very thought-provoking, very eye-opening. Throughout the film, she stresses the continued importance of Hannah Arendt's 20th century philosophies of the existence of education and the sort of temptation of totalitarianism. Travelling the world, Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun explores these ideas through an eclectic, fascinating and sometimes comical range of characters, from CCD, the rapping priest from Tokyo, to the mayor of Sheffield. I loved seeing these characters, seeing them interact with Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun and for their personalities to come through, and of course to hear their very interesting perspectives. Importantly, she lets this array of people lead her on her journey, allowing them all to express their individual thoughts and never reducing them to a single conclusive idea. Hannah Arendt's philosophies allowing for a plurality of thoughts, which is really the key to her documentary.
So Eliana, tell us about the jumper.
Yes, very exciting. I got a jumper that says, well, it says I'm not a monster, but obviously there's an I at the top, so I'm Not a Monster, the name of the film I saw. It was really exciting because I also got to interview Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun. She brought a doll with her, which she made in Japan with a sort of, she made the kimono for the doll as well. The doll was meant to be Hannah Arendt, who is key to the documentary.
Would you recommend it, and who to?
I would recommend it. It's really like an experimental sort of video essay at the end of the day. And there's a lot of theorising, but there's also pockets of dance and song, which sort of lightens it up a bit. Dr. Nelly Ben Hayoun's playful personality really shines through, makes the heavy content a bit more easily digestible. I think it speaks to everyone and it has time for everyone. If you really want to watch something that's very eye-opening and really makes you think, then it's definitely for you. Would you recommend Marriage Story?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going to pick a specific group of people. I'm going to say everybody.
Yeah.
I've said it for everything, but watch it.
I took the easy road as well and said everybody for mine pretty much. Everyone go and watch them.
It's going to be on Netflix, December, so you don't even have to pay.
Pretty much everyone has Netflix, so you do.
It's going to be on Netflix. You have to pay.
It is a bit expensive. If you don't have Netflix, maybe your mum has Netflix, maybe your friend has Netflix, just get their password and just stay logged in. Yes. And then you can watch it for free.
Steal someone's Netflix account.
There we go.
Steal it. Thank you.
And that is the closing message there.
Eliana and Sam signing off. Godspeed.